The Galactic Council chamber hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for what many considered the most important session in recorded history. The massive crystalline structure floating in the void between star systems had hosted countless diplomatic meetings over the past millennium, but never one quite like this. Ambassador Zexthal of the Kytherian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes with one of his forearms while his compound eyes scanned the assembled delegates. The insectoid diplomat had lived through 3 centuries of galactic politics, yet he'd never witnessed such unanimous agreement among species that typically couldn't decide on basic trade regulations. "The motion stands before us," announced Supreme Arbiter Velnara, her melodious celestial voice carrying across the chamber through universal translators. The species known as humans from the planet designated Earth 3 have been deemed a Class X threat to galactic stability and peace. A low murmur rippled through the assembly. Class X designation was reserved for the most dangerous civilizations, those capable of systematic genocide, planetary destruction, or worse. In the Council's 1,000-year history, only 12 species had ever received such classification, and 11 of those had been subsequently eliminated for the greater good of the galaxy. Dr. Yathera, the Confederation's chief xenobiologist, rose from her seat. Her crystalline form caught the chamber's ambient light, creating rainbow patterns across nearby surfaces. "Honorable delegates, the evidence is overwhelming. This species exhibits unprecedented levels of aggression, territorial expansion, and, most disturbing of all, they appear to thrive in combat situations that would traumatize any civilized being." The massive display screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing footage that had been gathered from deep space monitoring stations. The assembled delegates watched in horrified fascination as human military operations unfolded before their eyes. "Observe their combat doctrine," Dr. Yathera continued, her voice betraying a tremor of fear. "While most species engage in warfare as a last resort, seeking to minimize casualties and preserve resources, humans appear to embrace conflict. They charge directly into enemy fire, sacrifice themselves for tactical advantages, and show no regard for their own survival instincts." The footage showed human soldiers advancing through plasma bombardments, their faces painted with strange symbols, some of them actually singing as they ran toward certain death. Several delegates made sounds of disgust or terror in their native languages. Admiral Gorthay K of the Draconic Hegemony slammed his massive fist against his console. "This is madness. No rational species behaves this way. Look at their historical records, they've been in a state of continuous warfare for their entire recorded history. Even during periods of relative peace, they engage in simulated combat for entertainment." More footage appeared on the screens: boxing matches, martial arts competitions, extreme sports where humans hurled themselves from great heights or raced vehicles at deadly speeds, all while crowds cheered enthusiastically. "Their entertainment consists of watching members of their own species inflict violence upon each other," observed Ambassador Kretal of the Pacifist Coalition, her tentacles writhing with distress. "What manner of being finds joy in such brutality?" Commander Zurvex of the Military Analysis Division stepped forward, his cybernetic implants glowing as he accessed classified data. "Perhaps most terrifying is their response to adversity. Standard psychological warfare, fear tactics, intimidation, demonstration of superior force not only fails to discourage them but actually seems to motivate them further." The screens now displayed intercepted human communications from various conflicts. Delegates listened in growing horror to recorded messages where human soldiers, faced with impossible odds, expressed excitement rather than fear. Phrases like "bring it on," "let's party," and, finally, "a real challenge" echoed through the chamber. "This goes against every known principle of evolutionary psychology," Dr. Yathera explained, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. "When faced with a superior predator, rational beings flee, hide, or surrender. Humans attack. When outnumbered, they become more dangerous, not less. When facing extinction, they fight harder." Supreme Arbiter Velnara raised her hand for silence. The Council recognizes the severity of these findings. "However, we must also consider that this species has not yet achieved faster than light travel. Surely they pose no immediate threat to established civilizations?" A new voice spoke from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. Agent Mordeth of Galactic Intelligence rarely attended council sessions in person, preferring to work through intermediaries. His species, the Umbral Collective, were masters of espionage and information gathering. "Honorable Supreme Arbiter, recent intelligence suggests otherwise." Mordeth's form seemed to absorb light as he moved forward. 3 solar cycles ago, we detected unusual energy signatures emanating from their star system. Our long-range monitoring stations have recorded what appears to be primitive but functional faster-than-light communication. Shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. Several delegates immediately began chattering in their native languages while others frantically accessed their data terminals. Furthermore, Mordeth continued, our analysis of their technological progression suggests they will achieve interstellar travel capability within 50 standard years, possibly fewer. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. 50 years was nothing in galactic terms, barely enough time to mobilize a proper defensive fleet, let alone evacuate vulnerable systems. Ambassador Zexthal's voice buzzed with barely controlled panic. 50 years to develop countermeasures against a species that has spent its entire existence perfecting the art of warfare? How do we defend against beings who consider death in battle to be honorable rather than tragic? Dr. Yathara pulled up additional data, her movements jerky with stress. Analysis of their mythology and cultural practices reveals an obsession with martyrdom and self-sacrifice. They literally worship beings who died violently for causes they believed in. Their most popular stories involve individuals overcoming impossible odds through sheer determination and violence. Stories they tell their offspring, added Commander Zervex grimly. They condition their young from birth to admire and emulate these traits. The display screen showed human children playing with miniature weapons, watching stories about soldiers and warriors, and participating in organized physical competitions that would be considered brutal hazing rituals by most galactic standards. Supreme Arbiter Velnara's normally composed demeanor cracked slightly. Are we to understand that an entire species has essentially evolved to become perfect killing machines? Not just killing machines, corrected Agent Mordeth. Adaptive killing machines. Our psychological profiles indicate humans possess unprecedented problem-solving capabilities when under pressure. The more desperate their situation becomes, the more creative and effective their solutions. They don't just fight, they evolve their fighting methods in real time. Ambassador Kretal's tentacles had gone completely still, a sign of extreme distress in her species. Then, they cannot be reasoned with? Surely some form of diplomatic contact. Negative, Mordeth's response was immediate. Our analysis of their first contact protocol suggests they would interpret any attempt at communication as either a challenge to be overcome or an opportunity to gather intelligence about potential enemies. Their default assumption appears to be that any unknown entity represents a threat to be neutralized. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates from dozens of species began arguing simultaneously. Some called for immediate preemptive strikes while others advocated for defensive preparations. A few suggested attempting to contain the humans within their own star system. Supreme Arbiter Velnara activated the chamber's sonic dampeners, bringing the cacophony under control. Order! We must proceed methodically. Admiral Gorthake, what are our military options? The massive draconic officer's scaled features twisted into what might have been a grimace. Problematic, Supreme Arbiter. To sterilize their planet from a safe distance would require the combined firepower of at least 12 major fleets. The energy expenditure alone would bankrupt half the Council's member nations. And if we wait until they achieve interstellar travel, asked Ambassador Zexthal. Then, we face the prospect of tracking down and destroying an unknown number of human settlements scattered across potentially hundreds of star systems, Admiral Gorthake replied. A task that could take centuries and might ultimately prove impossible. Dr. Yathara accessed her research files, projecting new data onto the main screens. There's another consideration. Human reproduction rates and colonization patterns suggest they prioritize rapid expansion and genetic diversification. If they achieve interstellar travel, they will likely spread across the galaxy faster than any species we've previously encountered. How much faster? Supreme Arbiter Velnara's voice was barely above a whisper. Conservative estimates suggest they could establish colonies in over 1,000 systems within 2 centuries of achieving FTL capability, Dr. Yathara responded. Aggressive estimates put that number closer to 10,000 systems within the same timeframe. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the chamber's ambient systems seemed to quiet as the implications sank in. Commander Zervex accessed his tactical databases. Military doctrine suggests our window of opportunity is closing rapidly. If we act within the next 5 standard years, a coordinated strike could eliminate the threat with minimal resource expenditure. And if we don't, asked a small, melodious voice from the upper galleries. Representative Liliana of the ethereal communes rarely spoke during council sessions, but her words carried weight due to her species' legendary prescient abilities. Then, we'll be fighting a war against an enemy that considers warfare to be the natural state of existence, Commander Zervex replied. An enemy that grows stronger through adversity, that innovates under pressure, and that will never surrender or retreat. Agent Mordeth stepped further into the light, his shadowy form becoming slightly more solid. Our intelligence projections indicate that once humans achieve interstellar capability, they will likely view the galaxy as territory to be conquered rather than explored. Their historical patterns suggest they will attempt to establish dominance over any species they encounter. Dominance through what means? Asked Ambassador Zexthal, though his tone suggested he already dreaded the answer. Any means necessary, Mordeth replied. Humans have demonstrated proficiency in conventional warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations, chemical weapons, biological warfare, and, according to our most recent intelligence, they are actively researching what they termed nuclear weapons. Several delegates made sounds of horror. Nuclear weapons were considered so barbaric that most species abandoned such research within decades of discovery, focusing instead on defensive technologies. They're developing planet killers while they still live on a single world, gasped Dr. Yathara. The psychological profiles become clearer. They're willing to risk their own extinction to gain tactical advantages. Supreme Arbiter Velnara stood slowly, her graceful form seeming to age before the assembled delegates' eyes. Then, we are faced with an unprecedented decision. For the first time in the Council's history, we must vote on the preemptive elimination of an entire species. The chamber fell silent again as the weight of the decision settled over everyone present. They were contemplating genocide, something the Council had sworn to prevent, not perpetrate. I call for a formal vote, Supreme Arbiter Velnara announced. All those in favor of immediate military action against the species designated as humans from Earth-3? One by one, representatives from every species raised their hands, tentacles, claws, or manipulator appendages. Even Ambassador Kretal of the Pacifist Coalition, after a long moment of internal struggle, slowly raised 3 of her tentacles. The vote is unanimous, Supreme Arbiter Velnara announced, her voice heavy with the burden of the decision. The human species is hereby designated for immediate termination. Admiral Gorthay K., you will coordinate with military commanders from all Council member nations to assemble the necessary firepower. Admiral Gorthay K. nodded grimly. Understood, Supreme Arbiter. I estimate we can have the combined fleet in position within 18 standard months. Make it 12, Supreme Arbiter Velnara ordered. Our intelligence suggests human technological development is accelerating. Every day we delay increases the risk they'll detect our preparations or achieve breakthrough technologies that could complicate the operation. As delegates began filing out of the chamber, discussing logistics and resource allocation, Agent Mordeth remained behind. His shadowy form approached the Supreme Arbiter's position. There's something else, he said quietly. Something I didn't mention during this session. Supreme Arbiter Velnara turned to face him, her expression showing exhaustion from the weight of the decision they just made. What is it, Agent? Our monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures from their star system 3 cycles ago, but there's been radio silence since then. No communications, no energy readings, nothing. You think they've detected our surveillance? Mordeth's form flickered with uncertainty. I don't know what to think, Supreme Arbiter. But humans don't typically go quiet unless they're planning something. Dr. Saracen stared at the massive holographic display floating in the center of the United Earth Defense Command bunker, buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps. The display showed a real-time tactical map of near-Earth space, and it was lit up like a Christmas tree with contact markers representing the largest alien fleet humanity had ever imagined. Final count, Admiral, she asked without taking her eyes off the display. Admiral James Morrison, a grizzled veteran of the resource wars, pulled up the latest sensor data on his tactical tablet. 12,437 vessels, Dr. Chin. Mass displacement analysis suggests each of the larger ships is roughly equivalent to a city-sized space station. Dr. Chin finally turned away from the display, her dark eyes meeting the Admiral's weathered gaze. Time to intercept? Assuming current velocity, they'll reach Mars orbit in 36 hours. Earth orbit in 42. And our defensive capabilities? Admiral Morrison's laugh was bitter. We have 6 prototype orbital defense platforms, each armed with experimental railguns that we've never actually tested against alien technology. Our entire space-capable military consists of 3 barely functional shuttles and a mining station that we've managed to strap some missiles to. Dr. Chen nodded slowly, as if she'd expected this answer. As humanity's leading expert on theoretical xenobiology and the head of the First Contact Protocol Committee, she'd spent the last 15 years trying to prepare for this exact scenario. Unfortunately, her committee had always assumed first contact would involve a single exploration vessel, not an invasion fleet. "Have we attempted communication?" she asked. "Every frequency, every mathematical sequence, every peaceful gesture we could think of," replied Commander Lisa Park, the bunker's communications officer. "They're not responding to anything. They're just coming." "Actually," interrupted Dr. Marcus Webb, the facility's chief physicist, "they did respond to something." Everyone in the room turned to look at the young scientist, who was frantically typing commands into his workstation. "Show them, Arya." The bunker's artificial intelligence system activated the main display, replacing the tactical map with a communications log. Displaying chronological sequence of contact attempts and responses, Arya announced in her synthesized voice. The log showed dozens of transmission attempts over the past week, mathematical sequences, prime numbers, pictographs, music, even crude drawings of human beings. Each attempt was marked with a timestamp and a notation, "No response." There, Dr. Webb pointed to the last entry. "Look at the timestamp. 47 minutes ago, we broadcast our complete nuclear missile inventory specifications as part of a planned deception operation. The alien fleet's velocity increased by 12% exactly 18 minutes later." Admiral Morrison leaned forward. "They sped up when they learned about our nuclear capabilities?" "Not just sped up," Dr. Webb corrected. "They altered their formation. Look at this tactical analysis." The display shifted to show the alien fleet's movement patterns. Before our transmission, they were approaching in a standard exploration formation, scouts forward, main fleet clustered for mutual support. After our transmission, they've spread into a standard siege configuration. Dr. Chen felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. "They're not here for first contact. They're here to eliminate us." "But why?" asked Commander Park. "We've never encountered them before. We've never threatened anyone. Hell, we can barely get to our own moon reliably." Dr. Chen's expression was grim. "Because they know what we are." Before anyone could ask what she meant, alarms began blaring throughout the bunker. Arya's voice cut through the chaos, detecting massive energy surge from approaching fleet. "All vessels are charging weapons systems. Time to optimal firing position?" Admiral Morrison barked. 34 hours, 17 minutes, Arya replied. Dr. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with a look of fierce determination. "Admiral, I need to speak with President Harrison immediately. And I need access to the Prometheus files." Admiral Morrison's eyebrows shot up. "Dr. Chen, the Prometheus files are classified beyond your clearance level." "Not anymore, they're not," she replied, producing a quantum-encrypted datapad from her jacket. "Authorization code Omega-7. Emergency protocols are now in effect." The Admiral reluctantly inserted the datapad into his terminal. After a moment, his expression changed from skepticism to shock. "Jesus Christ, Sarah. How long have you known?" "Known what?" Commander Park demanded. Dr. Chen gestured to Arya. "Display Prometheus file summary, authorization Chun Omega-7. The main display flickered, then showed a document header that made everyone in the room go silent. Project Prometheus, Theoretical Framework for Interspecies Conflict Resolution Through Asymmetric Warfare Doctrine. 15 years ago, Dr. Chin began, when I was appointed to head the First Contact Committee, I was also asked to participate in a classified research project. The question we were asked to answer was simple: if humanity encountered a hostile alien civilization with superior technology, how could we possibly survive? The display showed complex mathematical models, psychological profiles, and strategic analyses. Our research team included military strategists, psychologists, historians, and xenobiologists. We spent years analyzing every aspect of human nature that might be relevant to interspecies conflict. "What did you find?" asked Dr. Webb. "We found that humanity has several unique advantages that most aliens would likely lack," Dr. Chen replied. First, our aggression levels are off the charts compared to any theoretical stable spacefaring civilization. Second, our adaptability under pressure is unprecedented in known evolutionary models. Third, and, most importantly, we're absolutely insane by any rational standard. Admiral Morrison pulled up additional files. Define insane, Doctor. We're the only species that voluntarily engages in activities with high mortality rates for entertainment, Dr. Chen explained. We jump out of perfectly functional aircraft for fun. We race vehicles at speeds that would be lethal if anything went wrong. We climb mountains that kill people regularly just to say we did it. We box, wrestle, and practice martial arts even though these activities serve no survival purpose. She gestured to the display, which now showed comparative psychology charts. A rational species would view these behaviors as mental illness. But they give us something invaluable: we're not afraid of death, and we're comfortable with violence. Commander Park shook her head. But they have superior technology. Surely that trumps psychology? Not necessarily, Dr. Webb interjected, studying the data. Look at this analysis. Dr. Chen's team calculated something they called the rationality limitation factor. Dr. Chen nodded. Any species advanced enough to build interstellar warships must be highly rational, cooperative, and risk-averse. Those traits are necessary for long-term space travel and complex technology development. But those same traits make them predictable and limited in their tactical thinking. The display showed tactical simulations that had been run thousands of times over the past 15 years. Rational beings follow logical patterns. They minimize casualties, preserve resources, avoid unnecessary risks. They wage war the way engineers solve problems, methodically, efficiently, with clear objectives and measurable outcomes. And humans? Asked Admiral Morrison. Humans wage war the way artists paint, Dr. Chen replied with a grim smile. Creatively, passionately, and with complete disregard for conventional limitations. Arya interrupted their discussion. Detecting additional energy signatures. The alien fleet is deploying what appear to be long-range reconnaissance drones. Dr. Chen walked over to a secure terminal and began entering commands. Arya, activate Prometheus Protocol 7. Begin broadcasting the prepared message sequences. Sarah, what are you doing? Admiral Morrison asked. Something that will either save humanity or get us all killed faster, she replied. We're going to show them exactly what they're dealing with. The main display activated, showing a prepared video message. The image showed Dr. Chen standing in front of a backdrop featuring images of human warfare throughout history: ancient battles, medieval conflicts, World War I trenches, nuclear explosions, special forces operations. Greetings, unknown visitors, the recorded Dr. Chen began. We know you're here to destroy us. We know you consider us a threat to galactic peace and stability. You're absolutely right. Admiral Morrison stared at the display in shock. Sarah, you can't seriously be quiet, she snapped. Let them see what we are. The recorded message continued, we are humanity. We have spent our entire history perfecting the art of killing each other, and we're very good at it. We have weapons that can destroy planets, poisons that can kill millions, and strategies that can turn entire solar systems into graveyards. The background images shifted to show nuclear weapons tests, chemical warfare, biological research facilities, and orbital bombardment simulations. But here's what you don't understand about us, the recording continued. We're not just warriors. We're survivors. We're the species that looked at natural disasters and decided to build better. We looked at disease and decided to cure it. We looked at death itself and decided it was negotiable. The images now showed human achievements: hospitals, space programs, technological innovations, humanitarian efforts. You think you're coming here to eliminate a threat, recorded Dr. Chen concluded. But you're actually about to discover what happens when you threaten the only species in the galaxy that considers extinction to be a challenge rather than a fate. The message ended, and the bunker fell silent except for the hum of computer systems. Broadcasting message on all frequencies, Arya announced. Detecting immediate response from alien fleet. The tactical display showed the alien formation beginning to change again, but this time the ships were clustering together rather than spreading out. They're going defensive, Admiral Morrison observed. Why would they do that after receiving a message like that? Dr. Webb was frantically analyzing the incoming sensor data. Because they're starting to understand what they're dealing with, he said, his voice filled with both excitement and terror. Look at these energy readings. They're not just charging weapons anymore, they're charging shields, defensive systems, even what looks like faster-than-light engines. They're scared, Dr. Chen said with satisfaction. Good. Fear makes rational beings even more predictable. Commander Park looked confused. But, Dr. Chen, we don't actually have planet-destroying weapons or orbital bombardment capabilities. We've never even fought in space before. Dr. Chen smiled grimly. No, but they don't know that. And, more importantly, they know that humans are creative enough to develop those capabilities very quickly when motivated. She pulled up another set of files on her terminal. Prometheus Protocol 8 involves giving them a demonstration of human ingenuity under pressure. What kind of demonstration? Admiral Morrison asked warily. The kind that involves turning our entire nuclear arsenal into a single devastating surprise, Dr. Chen replied. Arya, initiate contact with all global defense networks. We're implementing the Damocles Gambit. Sarah, the Damocles Gambit is theoretical, Admiral Morrison protested. We've never tested it. We don't even know if it's physically possible. Which is exactly why it will work, Dr. Chen replied. They're expecting rational tactics from a rational species. Instead, we're going to do something so insane, so impossible, so utterly human that they'll have no choice but to recalculate everything they think they know about warfare. The bunker's communication systems came alive with incoming transmissions from military bases around the world. Voices in dozens of languages began reporting readiness status for an operation that had existed only as a theoretical exercise until this moment. All stations report ready for Damocles implementation, Commander Park announced, her voice tight with stress. Dr. Chen looked at Admiral Morrison. Admiral, in approximately 30 hours, that alien fleet is going to discover why evolution created only one species crazy enough to split the atom and, then, decide it would make a good weapon. Admiral Morrison stared at her for a long moment, then, slowly nodded. God help us all. God helps those who help themselves, Dr. Chen replied. And, we're about to help ourselves to the biggest tactical surprise in galactic history. The main display showed the alien fleet continuing its approach, their defensive formations growing tighter as they processed humanity's first official message to an alien species. None of them suspected that this species had just declared war on the entire concept of rational warfare. In bunkers and command centers across Earth, human beings began implementing a plan so audacious that it violated every principle of tactical common sense. But, then, again, common sense had never been humanity's strength. Their strength was making the impossible happen when everything depended on it. Admiral Gorthay K stood in the command center of the flagship Eternal Dominance, watching the tactical displays with growing unease. The massive draconic warrior had led fleets against 17 different species over his 4-century military career, but something about this engagement felt fundamentally different. Status report, he rumbled, his voice causing nearby officers to straighten their postures reflexively. Commander Yithka, his second-in-command, consulted her crystalline data interface. All fleet elements are in position, Admiral. Long-range bombardment vessels report full weapon charges. The human planet designated Earth 3 is within optimal firing range. And, yet we haven't commenced bombardment, Admiral Gorthay K observed, his massive claws drumming against the command console. Explain our delay, Commander. Sir, the Psychological Warfare Division has advised caution following the humans' most recent transmission. Commander Yithka's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. They believe the message may have contained coded intelligence about human military capabilities. Admiral Gorthay K accessed the transmission logs, watching the recorded human female deliver her message with what could only be described as aggressive confidence. The background imagery was disturbing: weapons of massive destruction, warriors engaging in seemingly suicidal combat, and technology that appeared far more advanced than their intelligence reports had indicated. This human speaks of planet-destroying weapons, he mused. Our scouts reported no evidence of such technology. That's correct, Admiral. However, intelligence analysis suggests the humans may have been concealing their true capabilities. Commander Yithka pulled up additional data streams. The energy signatures we've detected from their planet have increased by 300% since we arrived in their star system. Admiral Gorthay K's combat experience screamed warnings at him. no species increased their energy output that dramatically unless they were either preparing for massive industrial production or charging weapons systems. Given the humans' demonstrated propensity for violence, he suspected the latter. Communications, any response to our standard surrender demands? He asked. Lieutenant Vorkesh, the fleet's communications officer, made a sound that indicated nervousness in his species. Admiral, they haven't just ignored our surrender demands. They've been sending us additional messages every few minutes. What kind of messages? Mathematical equations, Admiral. Specifically, equations related to nuclear fusion, antimatter containment, and what our physicists believe to be theoretical frameworks for weaponizing black holes. The command center fell silent except for the hum of shipboard systems. Admiral Gorthake had never encountered a species that responded to invasion by sending physics lessons to their attackers. "Show me these equations," he commanded. The main display filled with complex mathematical formulations that hurt to look at. Admiral Gorthake wasn't a physicist, but he'd seen enough weapon specifications in his career to recognize the underlying principles. "These are instructions," he said slowly. "They're teaching us how to build weapons." "That's our assessment as well, Admiral," Commander Yithka confirmed. "But why would they educate their enemies about advanced weapons technology?" Before Admiral Gorthake could respond, every alert system on the flagship began screaming simultaneously. The main display shifted to show sensor readings that made no immediate sense, massive energy spikes occurring not just on Earth, but throughout their entire star system. "Report!" Admiral Gorthake roared. Lieutenant Vorkesh's voice cracked with stress. "Admiral, we're detecting simultaneous energy discharges from 17 different locations in this system. Earth's moon, 3 asteroid mining stations, 2 orbital platforms we didn't know existed, and what appears to be a network of hidden installations throughout the asteroid belt." "Impossible," Commander Yithka breathed. "Our scouts would have detected permanent installations." "Unless they built them after we arrived," Admiral Gorthake said grimly. The implications were staggering. What kind of species could construct orbital weapons platforms in less than 2 days? The sensor operator, a nervous young celestial named Aritel, looked up from his console with expression of pure terror. "Admiral, the energy readings suggest these aren't conventional installations. The power signatures match theoretical models for structures built using controlled nuclear fusion as construction energy. They're building weapons by detonating nuclear devices?" Admiral Gorthake's military mind struggled to process this information. Using nuclear weapons as construction tools was beyond reckless, it was insane. "It appears so, Admiral," Aritel confirmed. "And the construction appears to be ongoing. We're detecting new energy sources coming online every few minutes." Admiral Gorthake accessed his tactical analysis systems, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The human planet was now surrounded by a growing network of energy sources that hadn't existed when his fleet arrived. Either the humans had technology so advanced they could build major installations in hours, or they were improvising solutions using methods that no rational species would consider. "Admiral," Lieutenant Vorkesh called out, "incoming transmission from the human planet." "Same female as before. Put it through." Dr. Sarachin appeared on the main display again, but this time she was standing in what appeared to be a military command center. Behind her, dozens of humans worked frantically at control consoles while displays showed incomprehensible data streams. "Greetings again," she began, her tone somehow even more confident than before. "I hope you've been enjoying our mathematics lessons. Consider them a professional courtesy. We believe in informed consent, even in warfare." Admiral Gorthake leaned forward. This human was either bluffing or absolutely confident in her species' capabilities. Either possibility was dangerous. "We've spent the last 36 hours giving you a demonstration of human problem-solving capabilities," Dr. Chen continued. "We've built 17 orbital weapons platforms using technology we invented yesterday. We've converted our asteroid mining operations into mass drivers capable of accelerating multi-ton projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. And we've networked our global nuclear arsenal into a single coordinated system." The display showed technical schematics that made Admiral Gorthake's blood run cold. The humans weren't just improvising weapons, they were improvising weapons systems that seemed to violate several laws of physics. "But here's the really interesting part," Dr. Chen said with what could only be described as a predatory smile. "Everything we've shown you represents approximately 4% of our full capabilities when properly motivated. 4%? Admiral Gorthay K. whispered. You see, Dr. Chin continued, you made a critical error in your assessment of our species. You assumed that our warfare capabilities were limited to what we've demonstrated during peacetime. But humans don't innovate during peacetime, we innovate during crises. And you've just provided us with the biggest crisis in human history. The background behind Dr. Chin shifted to show images that defied belief. Humans in spacesuits were manually connecting nuclear warheads to improvised rocket systems. Others were using industrial equipment to construct what appeared to be particle accelerators in space. Still others were assembling structures that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd never heard of safety regulations. Every minute you remain in our star system, we become more dangerous, Dr. Chen explained. Every hour gives us time to develop new weapons systems. Every day allows us to implement strategic concepts that we previously considered too insane to attempt. Admiral Gorthay K. activated his fleet's communication systems. All vessels, implement immediate combat readiness. Begin evasive maneuvers and prepare for. His orders were interrupted by Lieutenant Vorkesh. Admiral, the humans are broadcasting something on all frequencies. It appears to be music? The command center filled with sounds unlike anything any of them had ever heard. Human voices raised in complex harmonies, accompanied by instruments that created driving, rhythmic melodies. The music had an aggressive, primal quality that seemed to resonate in their bones. What is this? Commander Yithka asked. According to our cultural analysis database, Aritel reported, this appears to be what humans call war music. Their historical records indicate they traditionally perform these songs before engaging in combat. The music grew louder and more complex, and Admiral Gorthay K. realized that the humans weren't just broadcasting randomly. The songs were synchronized with energy spikes from their improvised weapons platforms. They were using music to coordinate their attacks. Admiral, Aritel called out urgently, massive energy spike detected from Earth's moon. The structure they've built there is charging what appears to be a directed energy weapon. Impossible, Admiral Gorthay K. snarled. They don't have the technology to. The main display showed a beam of coherent energy lancing out from the lunar surface and striking one of their forward scout. The Galactic Council emergency session had been in continuous session for 72 hours, and Supreme Arbiter Velnara was beginning to understand what humans meant when they spoke of nightmares. The crystalline chamber that had hosted peaceful diplomatic discussions for a millennium now buzzed with panic as representatives from 47 species tried to comprehend reports that defied every principle of rational warfare. Status report from Admiral Gorthay K., she announced wearily. Agent Mordeth materialized from the shadows, his form more solid than usual, a sign of extreme stress in his species. Admiral Gorthay K. reports that his fleet remains trapped in the human star system. Attempts to breach the gravitational containment field have resulted in the loss of 3 additional vessels. Destroyed, asked Ambassador Zexthal, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's emergency lighting. No, Mordeth replied grimly. Captured. The humans have somehow developed technology that can disable our ships without destroying them. They're taking prisoners and studying our technology. A collective shudder ran through the assembled delegates. The idea of humans gaining access to galactic technology was terrifying enough, but the implications of their apparent ability to reverse engineer alien systems in real time was beyond horrifying. Dr. Ythera's crystalline form flickered rapidly, her species equivalent of hyperventilation. Our analysis teams have been studying the energy signatures coming from the human star system. The humans have achieved technological breakthroughs that our most advanced civilizations haven't accomplished in millennia. Such as? Supreme Arbiter Velnara asked, though she dreaded the answer. Functional faster-than-light communication, controlled gravitational manipulation, and what appears to be the practical weaponization of quantum mechanics, Dr. Ythera reported. They've accomplished in 3 days what should have taken centuries of careful research and development. Commander Zervex accessed his military databases, his cybernetic implants glowing as he processed incoming tactical data. More disturbing is their apparent disregard for conventional safety protocols. Our intelligence suggests they're implementing technologies without extensive testing, accepting failure rates that would be considered genocidal by any rational species. And yet their technologies work, observed Ambassador Kretel, her tentacles writhing with distress. How is that possible? Because humans don't think like us, Agent Mordeth replied. They don't develop technologies through careful, systematic research. They build something that might work, test it by using it in actual combat, and improve it based on what happens when it explodes. Supreme Arbiter Velnara accessed the latest intelligence reports, her expression growing more concerned with each data point.
Agent Mordeth, what can you tell us about human communication since the engagement began?
That's perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this entire situation, Mordeth replied.
The humans haven't just been talking to our fleet. They've been broadcasting to the entire galaxy. The chamber fell silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems. Broadcasting to the galaxy during their first interstellar conflict was either an act of supreme confidence or complete insanity. What are they broadcasting? Supreme Arbiter Velnara asked.
Technical specifications, Mordeth replied.
Detailed plans for every weapon system they've developed during this engagement.
They're literally teaching the entire galaxy how to build the technologies they're using against us.
Ambassador Zexthal made a sound of confusion. Why would they share military secrets with potential enemies? Because they don't see them as secrets, Dr. Ythera answered, her analysis of human psychology finally providing clarity. Humans view technological development as a competitive process.
They're not afraid of other species having their weapons because they're confident they can build better ones. The main display activated, showing intercepted human transmissions. The assembled delegates watched in fascination and horror as human engineers explained complex physics concepts while simultaneously implementing them in weapons systems. Observe their teaching methodology, Dr. Ythera continued.
They're not just explaining how their technologies work. They're explaining how to improve them. They're encouraging the galaxy to develop better weapons specifically so they can have more challenging opponents.
Supreme Arbiter Velnara felt something she'd never experienced before: existential terror about the future of galactic civilization.
They want us to become more dangerous?
It appears so, Mordeth confirmed.
Our intelligence analysis suggests that humans find warfare against inferior opponents to be unsatisfying.
They prefer enemies who can challenge them to develop even more advanced weapons. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates began arguing in dozens of languages simultaneously. Some called for immediate evacuation of nearby star systems, others demanded the deployment of additional fleets, and a few suggested attempting to negotiate with the humans before they became even more dangerous. Supreme Arbiter Velnara activated the sonic dampeners, bringing order to the chaos.
Agent Mordeth, have the humans made any demands? Do they want territory, resources, political concessions? No demands whatsoever, Mordeth replied.
According to our communications analysts, they seem primarily interested in studying our technology and testing their weapon systems against actual alien vessels.
They're using our invasion fleet as a research opportunity? Commander Zurvex asked incredulously. It appears so. They've sent several messages to Admiral Gorthay K suggesting modifications to his tactical formations that would make his fleet more challenging to fight.
The implications settled over the chamber like a dark cloud.
Humans weren't just defending themselves, they were using the galaxy's first interstellar war as an educational experience.
Supreme Arbiter, came a new voice from the communication systems.
We're receiving a direct transmission addressed to the Galactic Council.
The origin point is the human star system.
Supreme Arbiter Velnara hesitated.
Direct communication with the humans carried enormous risks, but ignoring them might be even more dangerous.
Put it through.
Dr. Sarah Chen appeared on the main display, but she looked different than in previous transmissions. She was now wearing what appeared to be a military uniform covered in insignia that human cultural analysts had identified as symbols of authority and achievement.
Greetings, Galactic Council, Dr. Chen began. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Command. I believe we need to have a conversation. The title change wasn't lost on the assembled delegates.
This human had been promoted during the engagement, suggesting that her species valued combat leadership highly enough to elevate successful commanders in real time. We've been monitoring your communications, Admiral Chen continued, and we understand that you're concerned about the implications of our recent technological developments. We'd like to address those concerns directly.
Supreme Arbiter Velnara found her voice.
Admiral Chen, your species has demonstrated capabilities that threaten the stability of galactic civilization.
We must discuss terms for.
For what?
Admiral Chen interrupted.
For our surrender?
For limiting our technological development? For agreeing not to explore the galaxy?
The human's expression showed what cultural analysts had identified as amusement, an emotional response that indicated humans found serious situations entertaining. Supreme Arbiter, you seem to misunderstand our position in this conflict, Admiral Chen explained. You didn't come to our star system to negotiate. You came to exterminate us. We've simply demonstrated that exterminating humans is more difficult than you anticipated. The display behind Admiral Chen showed footage that made several delegates recoil in horror. Human engineering teams were working in the wreckage of captured alien vessels, apparently reverse engineering technologies in real time while the original crews watched from detention facilities. However, Admiral Chen continued, we're not unreasonable beings. We understand that our rapid technological advancement is concerning to established galactic civilizations. Therefore, we're prepared to offer a compromise. What kind of compromise? Supreme Arbiter Velnara asked warily. We propose the establishment of what we're calling the Galactic Warfare Research Initiative, Admiral Chen explained. A collaborative organization dedicated to the peaceful development of military technologies through controlled conflict scenarios. The chamber erupted into shocked gasps and horrified exclamations. The humans were proposing to institutionalize interstellar warfare as a research methodology. Think of it as competitive technological development, Admiral Chen continued, apparently oblivious to the chaos her suggestion had caused. Species volunteer to participate in controlled military exercises. Winners get access to Lozer's technological databases. Everyone learns something new. Nobody gets permanently exterminated. Commander Zurvex leaned forward. You're suggesting we formalize warfare as an educational process? Exactly. Admiral Chen replied with enthusiasm. Look, you came here because you were afraid of what humans might do if we achieved interstellar travel. But, now you've seen what we can accomplish when we're properly motivated. Imagine what we could develop if we had access to galactic technology databases and regular opportunities to test our innovations against worthy opponents. The logic was as horrifying as it was undeniable. Humans had achieved impossible technological breakthroughs in 3 days of actual combat. Given access to alien technology and regular warfare opportunities, they would likely become unstoppable within years. Alternatively, Admiral Chen continued, her tone becoming noticeably less friendly, you could continue trying to exterminate us. But, I should probably mention that we've spent the last 72 hours developing contingency plans for that scenario. The display shifted to show orbital installations around Earth that definitely hadn't existed a week earlier. More disturbing, some of the structures appeared to be partially built from materials that matched the hull signatures of missing galactic vessels. We've reverse-engineered your faster-than-light travel technology, Admiral Chen explained. We've also improved it. Our new ships can travel approximately 40% faster than your current fleet capabilities, and they're equipped with weapons systems based on technologies that we invented specifically for fighting aliens. Supreme Arbiter Velnara felt the foundation of galactic civilization cracking beneath her feet. You've built faster-than-light ships in 3 days? 7 ships so far, Admiral Chen confirmed. We're launching number 8 in approximately 6 hours. Each one is more advanced than the last because we keep figuring out better ways to do things. Agent Mordeth's form became more substantial as his species' stress responses peaked. Admiral Chen, surely you understand that releasing human technology across the galaxy would destabilize every existing power structure? Agent Mordeth, that's exactly the point, Admiral Chen replied with a predatory smile. Stagnant power structures need to be destabilized. That's how progress happens. The display showed technical schematics for weapon systems that seemed to violate the laws of physics while simultaneously explaining how those laws could be circumvented through creative engineering approaches. Here's what we propose, Admiral Chen continued. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity as a member species with full rights and privileges. In exchange, we'll share our technological developments and limit our expansion to unoccupied star systems for the next 50 years. And, if we refuse? Supreme Arbiter Velnara asked. Then, we'll demonstrate why trying to exterminate humans was the worst strategic decision in galactic history, Admiral Chen replied. We'll reverse-engineer every piece of technology in Admiral Gorthake's fleet. We'll build weapons systems specifically designed to counter every known galactic military capability. And then, we'll visit every council member world to personally explain our position on interspecies diplomacy. The threat was delivered with the same casual tone someone might use to discuss dinner plans, but every delegate in the chamber understood the implications. Humans weren't just offering to share their technology, they were offering to not conquer the galaxy. Supreme Arbiter, Admiral Chen added, "You have 48 hours to reach a decision. After that, we start Phase 2 of our defensive preparations." "What is Phase 2? Supreme Arbiter Velnara asked, though she was terrified to hear the answer. "Phase 2 is when we stop limiting ourselves to technologies that are theoretically possible," Admiral Chen replied. "Phase 2 is when we start experimenting with approaches that rational beings would never attempt." The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate the most important decision in their history. They could accept humanity as an equal member of galactic civilization, or they could discover what happened when the galaxy's most irrational species decided that galactic civilization needed to be replaced with something more interesting. Supreme Arbiter Velnara looked around the chamber at representatives from species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, and realized that they were no longer the apex predators of their universe. That distinction now belonged to a species that had just declared war on the very concept of rational limitations. The vote was unanimous. "Welcome to the galaxy, humanity.